Hey now, Josh Bitton, the infamous Josh Bitton.
That sounds right.
It's Bitton.
Exactly.
Correct.
But it is said like what, Josh?
Like what you twirl, baton.
Yeah.
Like what you twirl.
Yeah.
I'll flip
The
you.
re-
I had to make you say it again.
I'll flip you for real.
I'll flip you.
Exactly.
Can you hear me in the back? Hello. It's all fun and games. You know, my father used to say that. It's all fun and games until someone gets their eye poked out. I'm like, why would you say that to a kid? You know what I mean? Like, I don't even understand that.
The best thing about that, and I know we're not even started yet, but there's an amazing story from before I was born about like the dysfunction of my family, which is my father was really charming, a show off, a little scary at times, and apparently he was at a party that we're hosting at our house. Maybe I was a baby, and he was trying to show off, and he knew judo, and he told my mom, he's from the Middle East. He's like, I want you to poke me in the eyes, right?
Oh,
So what he would do is if you go to poke someone, if someone goes to like poke you like this, you go like this and they can't get you. My
Right.
mom has no idea what my father's asking. And my father goes, poke me in the eyes. And my dad goes like this. And my mom takes two fingers and goes, poop, and just double pokes him in both his eyes. And he's like, oh! And my mom is expecting him to do some judo move. And she just basically blinds him for a minute.
Oh my God, I love it. That is awesome. What a great story.
Welcome to my home.
Yeah, welcome to my life.
Guys, but do it exactly how I need you to so I can block it in exactly the right way.
So I look good in front of my friends.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Right on.
Yeah, so you, my friend, you're an actor and an acting coach. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you want to share with the audience, the listener?
You know, I grew up in New York City. Richie and I share that. I grew up very much in like I like to say I grew up in like a neighborhood, you know,
sure.
where language and fists were the conversation pieces, I suppose, or were the dialect we spoke, and I was always kind of like I was a mix of I was a really smart kid, like school came easy to me, and I was a really sensitive kid. And both of those things were not necessarily the best thing that you could have as tools in that place. And I got really lucky, and I got into a high school in Norman, public school. But it was like for me, it was sort of like my first sense of salvation. And I think because of the sensitivity and all that kind of stuff, I went from there to college, and in college is kind of where I found what I do for a living, which is I'm an actor. And it was the first place that I existed in a space where being sensitive was lauded instead of belittled, is what I would say. And so I trained as an actor. I got into a graduate program. I studied with this guy, William Esper, who was this really beautiful, brilliant teacher and man. And then went to New York, and I started working in theater and what have you. And I was making a living acting, and I got this very weird job through a very weird series of events where I wound up being Eminem's acting coach on the set of 8 Mile. And I was there.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah. I was on set with him every day for 4.5 months. And it's from there that I moved to LA. And I moved to LA because all the producers and the actors were like, you know, you're a young actor, you're really talented, you should come out. And then I learned the difference between LA and New York. Because I was a working actor in New York, and it took me like a good 5 years in LA before anyone would really kind of take me seriously, even with that kind of very interesting job, I guess, that I had as Em's coach. What was really interesting about it was that looking back now, given the way I know you guys, right, I also recognize that it wasn't just the difference in New York and LA, because as I said that out loud, I was like, oh, there's something I'm missing. I had no ability to take ownership of what was a pretty cool accomplishment, you know, to be like 29, 30 years old, and you're the acting coach to the lead of like an $80 million movie.
Yeah.
But in my head, as I did with so many things, I saw it as, well, I'm not in the cast. I didn't get a role. I minimized even it. I enjoyed it, and I learned a tremendous amount. But to be able to like own it, and own it with sort of some kind of power or place or space was something that I couldn't really do. And then from that, in a series of events with different people and conversations, someone asked me to assist teaching an acting class. And that has led now to me running my own little acting school. So between that and guest starring on TV and what have you, I make a living. I guess that's what I would say.
Wow. Congratulations, bro. That's a huge achievement.
Yeah. And it really is a huge, I thought kudos to both of you guys, because I've often said what a great performance he gave. And I didn't realize he had, and I didn't know this about you. What a fantastic, that you did a great job. You did a great job. I mean, at that last scene when he tells when he takes the wind out of their sails by saying everything, it was so believable. I remember crying with happiness because he really sold it, and not just because he can rap, but because he sold the entire movie of us caring about him. You only cry about a character when they come up in their moment, if you've already cared about them. Don't just, you can't listen to an anthem if you haven't had the build up to feel that kind of uplifting that you feel. So you did a great job on that. Congratulations. And I'm glad you're owning it now.
Thank you. I mean, look, he's an artist. The guy's an artist. Right?
Oh yeah.
So my job was sort of halfway done. And the other thing I will say that kind of made him easy to work with was he was incredibly humble. Like, he was incredibly humble about knowing, because we really met because they flew me to Detroit to play his role in the screen test. And he watched, and then he screen tested with them later. And I did not know how that was going to go. The only thing I knew about him is I was a hip hop fan. So that was, I was a fan. But, the media portrayed him in a very specific way. And when he watched me play his role, he came up to me immediately after and he gave me a pound and a hug. And he said to me, "Yo, man, how do you do that?" And I thought it might go a very different way. Like, I thought he might be like, "Who the fuck is this guy coming in and playing my part?" But there was just no ego involved. So he became kind of easy to work with because he wanted to be great. He wanted to tell the story great. And it was his story in so many ways that he didn't shy away from the personal element of it. So I appreciate you saying that. I had a very good student, is kind of what I would say. And he was, and I also will say he's a heck of a guy. He's funny, he's charming, and all the guys on that show, we're all still friends, which doesn't happen all the time in my business. Like, you make friends, and if you see them, there's always love. But with those guys, it was a real genuine connection that I think a lot of us shared, and it was a really cool experience for sure.
Wow, that's great.
I'm really glad to hear that he's a really great guy, because I played One Shot for my mom before she left this world. She had the big C years ago.
Oh,
and it was out. He was about to get the Oscar, and I played it. I said, "This is just genius. The writing is just fantastic, flawless." And she said, "I think that rap is the poetry of today." And I was like, "I think you're right. I hadn't thought about it like that." She goes, "No," she said, "they are the poets of today," because she was raised in the 60s, when it was all the beatnik, you know what I mean? And they were like doing this. Poetry readings were such a huge thing. Everybody went, and she was saying that about rap artists, and he definitely is one of the best of those.
I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. I remember watching it for the first time, and like you said, that rap battle when he just filleted that guy at the knees and said, "Oh, you think you got me, bro? I'm going to tell you about me. So I'm going to dismiss everything that you think you're going to, take me out at the knees with." I loved it. All right. That being said, we're going to drop a topic on you to discuss. So, how do you encourage people? You are an actor, you are an acting coach. And from what you just told us, obviously you have to know how to get to people, not only when you're on set, but I think even more so to build someone up to be able to be on set. So how do you encourage people?
Man, and this is going to be tricky for me to say because it feels like a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Like a brand. I just have to do something.
Well, while you think about that, let me tell our listeners you can also watch this on video.
Okay,
So
great.
go to lnk.bio/the Hey Now podcast. You can also see the links to the video and stuff. So we'll just give you a minute to.
So recently I started coaching on a weekly basis a former NFL football player, all pro tackle, great dude who's incredibly serious about post his NFL career. He wants to do this. And and I really love him. He's a great dude. And I had to move a scheduled appointment with him because I had to work with this actor here in LA who he's a fan of. And I said, hey man, I'm working with this person, blah, 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 blah. And he said, you're going to be great. You're a hell of a coach. And I said, oh, thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you because this is a person who has been coached his whole life. And he said, no, man, I've worked with a lot of quote unquote coaches. And he said, you're special at what you do because what a coach is someone who gets the most out of the person they work with. And I was really humbled by it. And it's hard for me to even say that out loud, but it is something that happened. And what I realized while talking with him back and forth was that I guess what I do, and this is funny because this comes from another former student of mine who also was an NFL football player who just wrapped 3 seasons on a TV show. He said, Josh, you give compliment sandwiches. And I said, what does that mean? He said, when you're critiquing, you start with something that someone has done well. And then you will go into the things they need to work on. And you will end with something they've done well. And I didn't know that I did that as a practice. But when I was talking with Gerald, that's the name of the person I'm working with currently, he said something kind of similar. And I realized that I think because of how I grew up and the amount of messaging I got about not being enough or about being, like the language that was thrown at me was like, I was a pussy, I was a bitch, I was this, I was weak, I was that. That the things that were sort of my natural experiences always felt like they were smushed down and that they were things I should be ashamed of. And then when I got into the acting arena, I was somewhat lauded for that sensitivity and for that ability to be open and present. I think maybe subconsciously or in some inherent way, I've recognized that you got to let people know that what they are and who they are is interesting. That it's the baseline for anything that's going to get them work. It's their authentic experience. It's their authentic point of view. That is what no one else can have. And I mean, like I remember sharing in a meeting once that, I don't wear flip-flops because if I can't fight or run in my footwear, I don't want to wear it because of where I grew up. And the way Richie's smiling and shaking and nodding his head, I saw him nod his head in that space. And I went, oh, that guy gets my experience. And if I had been afraid to share that, I don't know if the relationship I have with Richie would be the same because that was the first moment where we looked at each other and we're like, oh, we come from similar places. We get each other, So I think that is how I encourage, because one thing I've learned in this field, but I think it kind of probably goes for any, is that the only thing that no one else can do is be exactly who you are. Your set of past experiences, present experiences, the way your brain processes, the way your heart expresses things, feels things, moves through things is literally singular to you. No one can do exactly that.
Absolutely.
Even Philip Seymour Hoffman playing Truman Capote brilliantly. He's not Truman Capote. He's bringing the idea of Truman Capote to life through Phil Hoffman's gifts and experiences. And it is his personal take on that makes that performance something that all of us want to watch. And so I think that I would say, to answer your question, I think that that's what I do. I try to focus on what the person or who the person is, what they do well, and wherever they need to work to recognize that it will unlock more of who they are rather than telling them, which a lot of coaches, acting teachers that I've experienced will tell you is like, you suck. That's not good enough. And then all that does is it erodes that sense of self that is actually going to build the great performance, you know?
Sir Laurence Olivier said back in the day, don't ask who I become to play the character, but ask who the character becomes because I play it. And it's exactly what you just said. You bring yourself to the character. You don't try to emulate the character. You don't watch his movies, study him, and then think, I'm going to do this to try to pretend that I'm that character. No, you're going to embody that character, but as you, and you're going to bring your specific, unique talents, like you said, your authenticity, your transparency to the part, to the character. And that's how you be authentic. But I appreciate, what you do. And then to go back to just how tough love doesn't work. And that's what I get from what you were just talking about. Tough love doesn't work. There's a lot of coaches out there, whether it's acting or any other kind of, learning experience, where coaches will say, come on, what's wrong with you? Stop being a girl, man up. I heard that all my life. And you're right. I come from the same, cloth that you do. My family's originally from the Bronx, tough love, old-fashioned Italian, upbringing. And I can't tell you how many times, like you just said, the derogatory statements, what are you, a girl? What are you, this? What are you, that? And it tears you down. But so, like, I learned, like you, from attending meetings and self-help and just working on myself, that if I want to get to somebody, if I want to really encourage somebody, I want to first acknowledge who they are and what they do as a talent. And then if there is a critique, it comes out so much more gentler, because you're acknowledging, hey, you're doing a great job. Let's just tweak this a little bit. And I work with people all the time that is what I have to do. And it's okay. And I say, look, it's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. But how can we get to the bottom of this? Like, what's really going on? And how can we get to the bottom of it so that you feel good about yourself?
Yeah.
It's, and it's being authentic. It is hard because of, like you said, our upbringings, where we come from. And everything is a direct correlation of that. So, like, in your field, when you're trying to help somebody to get to that level of where they need to be to perform, you got to break through all of the, I want to say, trauma and programming to get them to open up and be authentic, so that the real, like you said, the real person comes out. That's great.
I have a quick question. So you give this to the people that you are coaching. What do you do for your jobs? Do you do the same for yourself?
It's funny. I'm starting rehearsals on a play in a couple days at a theater in Pasadena. One of the few theaters in LA that actually pays, which is really nice. And I've worked with this director before, and my partner, we met working on a play that he directed us in, and we're both in this play. And he does this thing where whenever he starts a play, he meets with each cast member one-on-one at their house or on Zoom if they can't get together, and wants to talk about the play, the part, their feelings, etc. And the first play he cast me in was the leading role in a Shakespeare play, in a Shakespeare comedy, Much Ado About Nothing. And I've told this story many times, that when he cast me, I thought he was making a huge mistake. Like, I thought he actually asked me to audition because we're friends and we'd worked together before, and he was just being nice. And then when I got cast, I was like, I'm not Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing. Benedict's usually tall and lean and classically handsome, and I look like a mook who's been in fistfights, and I'm built like a fire hydrant. I'm short and I'm stocky, you know what I mean? And he said to me, like, no, I cast you for you. I wanted you as Benedict. And we sat down and talked the other day about this other role, and I gave him all the reasons why I was wrong for the role. And then he told my partner in his one-on-one with her, Josh does this thing where he tells himself that he's wrong for every role he plays. And here, sitting with you guys right now, I'm realizing that a gentleness with myself is something that I need to bring to the table. It doesn't happen all the time that I'm like, no, you're wrong for this. But if it's if it doesn't fit this idea that Richie was talking about what I'm supposed to be and how I'm supposed to be, there's a real part of myself that goes, oh, there's no way. And it's really funny because one of the things I thought, Richie, when you were talking, that Olivia quote kind of blew me away. I don't let students talk about their characters in the third person. I don't let them say, he's doing this or she's doing that. Because my teacher used to go, oh, where's him? I don't see him. Where the fuck is he? I see you, right? And I said that all the time. I'm like, where is she? I don't see her. I don't see them, right? Because it has to come from you. And so in my own work, eventually that's where I get to. I'm starting to realize that there's a little part of myself, at least sometimes, that goes, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm wrong for this. And that I have to let that go. You know, and so it also reminds me that it is always a process. You know, there is no finish line towards self-acceptance and self-love. It's cunning and baffling, as they like to say, and I'm in this moment, you know, myself realizing like, yeah, it's cunning and baffling. Like it can be tricky. You know,
how can I suit up, show up, and be the best version of me? And how can I present that to whomever I'm talking to, whatever audience I'm playing to, whether that is in a meeting, whether that is what you do, whether that is just one-on-one. You know, I think authenticity is so important, you know, and especially for our listeners, you know, to be able to reason things out with someone other than yourself, but to be able to be honest with one another. And that's, I think, another thing that you bring to the table is, yes, you're a teacher, you're a coach in your own right and successful, but again, but the way you do it is by being authentic. And when people look at you and see you and get to know you the way I've gotten to know you, I mean, I appreciate you and value you as a friend, as a man who takes care of himself and works on himself to be the best version of himself he can be. And then now to find out even more information about you, you know, like I applaud you. I applaud you. And it's not an easy thing to do. People, you know, I think in general, and I admire anyone and I applaud anyone who is willing to take a look at themselves, willing to say, what am I not willing to look at? You know, especially when taking constructive criticism, like in your field, instead of going to a place of, oh, I'm going to, you know, because you're talking to me this way and where I came from and how I was programmed, you're belittling me. So I'm just going to get small, quiet, go hide out. And like what you just said, I'm not right for this part. I don't know what I'm doing here. But instead to encourage someone and be willing to look at those things. So when someone does, whether it's a coach, a teacher, a friend, and people will, if that's how you really know someone cares about you, especially in an intimate relationship or a friendship, is when someone is willing to say to you, hey, I've noticed this pattern in you and it doesn't suit you well. And I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but it comes across as this, that, or the other thing. And now for the other person not to take offense to that and say, hey, I'm willing to look at that. And then we go home and we look at that, we journal about it, we write about it, we do some self, you know, awareness on that and try to bring, you know, bring the solution back, you know, not wallow in what the problem is, but don't even look at it as a problem. Wow, this is actually an opportunity for me to look at myself, become a better person because someone pointed out to me that I have this characteristic. And sometimes we don't even know that we're doing what we're doing. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah. And another thing I would say to that question, go ahead. I want to
no, I want to say it was a gift to hear from him that you don't give yourself those parts in your own mind, that you talk your way out of them, that you were able to know because you said that's why I wanted to ask the question, because sometimes it's easier for us to help others than it is ourselves. So if you're giving all that kindness and compliment sandwiching for other people, what kind of compliment sandwiching are you giving to yourself when you get your own parts?
And real quick, not for nothing, but we are our own worst enemies.
Sometimes.
Sometimes we could be our own worst enemies because of how we were treated and programmed.
Yeah, and I will say this, you know, luckily, after years of being in an Al-Anon program, in years of therapy, and in years of just doing whatever it is that I need to do to kind of take care of myself, and I don't do it perfectly, and I don't do it all the time, but I've got a pretty good standard sort of practice that I do, whether it's like doing yoga, going on hikes, whatever. All those things are helpful to me. Reasoning it out with friends like you, friends I grew up with who are big open hearts. I also am able to give myself credit and value when I know my choice in whether like with a role is right. Even with that same director, there was a point in the play last year when we were doing What You Do where he wanted something to move a certain way. And myself and my partner, we weren't partners yet, but we were co-stars of the show. We didn't quite feel that that was it. And when I was younger and I didn't have all this work behind me, I also wouldn't have said, hey, I don't think this works. I would have maybe secretly resented it. I tried to do what he did. He was my director. That's my job. But I could turn to him and say, hey, man, now I was in the role. And now I started to feel like, okay, I think I can play this part. And this is how I will play this part. I could say to him, this doesn't work and this is why. Not combatively, just honestly and clearly. Because, Richie, you said something that made me think of this is if someone, growing up where I grew up, someone comes at me and they come at me in a belittling fashion and they're aggressive and they're trying to make me small. There were two things that would happen when I was a kid. I get small or I'd throw a punch, or throw it verbally or both or all three in some kind of weird amalgamation of I feel really small, go fuck yourself and here's a punch. It could all happen at once. But now even that, when someone attempts that, there is a part of me that can recognize that like, that's a them problem. I can hear what it is they need from me in it. And I can now figure out where that boundary of that is. Whether it's me verbally saying, don't talk to me that way. It's not going to be helpful to our process. Or for me to be able to just look and go, okay, the part of me that wants to retreat, he can stand right here. The part of me that wants to tell this person to go fuck themselves, he's still going to stand right here. And the part of me that wants to punch you in the face because of how you're talking to me, he's still going to stand right here. Like, this is my spot, my space. I can hear what it is you want. I don't like the way you're talking to me, but I don't have to respond, because that was the other thing too. And I know, Richie, from conversations we had, that you had the same feeling. There was often a feeling that if I didn't punch you in the face, then I was worthless for allowing you to treat me in that fashion. And that was a different kind of pressure. Like, I don't want to go around punching people in the face or telling them to go fuck themselves or, whatever it is that would be the response. It's exhausting. Like, it's exhausting. There's a play that I love. It was one of the first plays I ever loved, called Danny and the Deep Blue Sea. And,
oh yeah.
And Danny is the embodiment of growing up in our neighborhood. Yeah. And he says at one point, she's like, what are you going to do after this bar closes? He's like, I'm going to find another bar. And she's like, what are you going to do then? He's like, I'm going to find another bar. And she's like, what, you're not going to go home? And he goes, I can't go home. I feel like to go home, I got to fight everybody in the motherfucking Bronx. And I'm too tired to fight everybody. And I remember when I heard that line, I like cried. I didn't like cry. I cried because when I read it, actually, because I was playing the part, because I went, I'm too tired to fight everybody. So if some director wants to talk to me like I'm worthless, I don't have to allow it. But I also don't need to choke them out, or I don't need to run, and I don't need to do either one of those. And it's not that it happens easily. Not that I'm like, oh, I know how to handle this. Like like I'm some master surfer, but I have not reacted one way or the other. And in the end, I can walk into that space and feel my feet on the ground and feel integrity with how I live in that experience. And so I think, back to the question of like, how do I encourage people? I'm sure over the years that I've taught, I've shut a couple people down and not intended to do so. But I'd like to believe that the hundreds of people that I've taught over the years, that few of them have that experience, because I know I hated it when it happened to me. And so that those experiences become lessons for how I want to kind of move forward in doing what I do, whether it's teaching, whether it's acting, whether it's just being a friend or a fellow. Like, how can I hear someone give that experience space, and then hope that they can walk away with it feeling dignified in the contact we had, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's about holding space for one another. You know, a lot of people don't know how to do that. I think, you know, and I'm sure you've found this in your career as well as in your friendships, that, you know, sometimes you just need somebody to listen and understand what you're going through. You don't necessarily need them to fix things. And then the other side of that is the person that you are confiding in with sometimes tends to think that, oh, you want me to fix you, or I'm going to jump on your bandwagon and I'm going to justify why you should be justified in, you know, choking somebody the fuck out. And it's like, you know, but sometimes you just, you know, sometimes we just need to vent. And what I've learned in my life is just that, you know, and I so relate to the part of you being able to take up space. Just, man, that has always been one of the hardest things for me, and to just take up space and not cower, not turn around, not run away, just be in the moment and say, oh, okay, this is happening, but I don't have to, I could take a contrary action. I don't need to cower. I don't need to be weak. I don't need to be what everyone has told me I am up until this point. When you do enough work on yourself and you have self-worth, actual self-worth, you can, it doesn't have to. Where I come from, everything turned to physical, some sort of physical abuse, to label it in a lack of better words. So for me growing up, anytime there was a confrontation or somebody, like you said, was in my face trying to belittle me, I would always get really small, quiet, and think, if I say one more word, this is going to go bad, and it's going to go bad for me, because I'm going to get hammered. So, but now as an adult man who has taken care of myself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I won't allow that to happen. And now I don't feel that fear that everything is going to wind up in a physical altercation. It's like, we're adults. I don't get in trouble anymore. And if you're going to get in my face, I'm going to say, you know what? Time out. That's inappropriate. I don't appreciate you talking to me, without the fear of, oh, this guy's going to, all of a sudden, this guy's going to haul off and try to take me out, you know?
Yeah.
But go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I also think I've heard you say stories, because you can say weak or whatever. When I've heard you, when somebody gets on the wrong side of you'll be like, oh, you're not messing with me. Like, he gets a little scared. He doesn't get the way, the tone of voice that Richie, uses is like, oh no. He's like, oh, you want to go? You want to go? And he's saying it like verbally, like intellectually. I will take you down before it even needs to.
I will out philosophize you.
I'll tell you something.
Movie.
My brother has the greatest response. So my brother was a very, very, very tough guy, you know, and lived on the wrong side of the law when he was younger, did a lot of, you know, and he's really turned his life around. And so he's now like this kind of playful, fun version of the guy. And he's slightly shorter than I am. And he's not even as like built as I am, but he is a monster. Like, the fight happens. You've made an incorrect choice. And my brother, when someone has stepped to him now, he says 2 words and the fight ends. It doesn't start. He looks at them and he makes direct eye contact and he goes, wrong one. And in the middle of them going, he goes, wrong one. Like, you picked the wrong fucking one. And they can see it. And they will just, I've watched guys be like, hey, let me tell you something, blah, blah, and he's like, wrong one. And they're like, whoa, hey, whoa, hey. He doesn't even have to, his hands don't go up, nothing. He just looks at him. And and the thing about it is when he does it, and if I'm there, I get a chill. I'm like, oh, buddy, please back off.
Yeah.
Like, back off. This is going to go very poorly. And so, like, think about Richie, and it's one of the things that I think is amazing about people who are brave enough to kind of do work on themselves is, you know, I mean, I think you can see it if you're watching the video of this, but like to be in the presence of Richie here, like this is a big man and this is a solid man. Like if you told me he was still playing middle linebacker for the New York Giants, I'd be like, the middle's covered. We're good to go. And like nobody's running the ball against these guys. But that comes for free with you. But what's amazing about it is to hear, I know the stories and I've seen you share and I've seen you open your heart about stuff and the remarkable amount of healing that does. I mean, you know, we're talking about authenticity before. I think authenticity in places where that's the growth you're doing is massive. I will never forget being in an Al-Anon meeting and there was a dude, he had to be about 6'4". He was leading the meeting. He had like those big, like hoops, like in his ear, not hoops, like, you know, where there's like his earlobes are to here, right? They're black discs. He was wearing a literal chain, like a chain you could tow, a truck with, or as a necklace. He had a big black trench coat. Like he was sort of like goth hardcore punk, and he was tough. And he sat down to share. And I remember thinking the little boy part of my brain was like, I would love to be perceived as scary as that guy because I had felt so weak as a child. And then he opened up about getting beaten by his older brother on a daily basis and locked in closets and beaten with like things. And he did it with this big open heart. And that was in many ways, my story. I had a very similar experience. And I looked at a guy like that who seemed so tough and so strong. And he shared the same fears and smallness as a child that I felt, you know, and stuff that I've learned from you, Richie, in the same regard that have made me go like, maybe I'm not weak. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe actually I'm just having as honest an experience as everybody else is. Cause you know, my brother is tough as hell. It doesn't mean he's not scared of everything or anything, you know. His reaction to things that are fearful is, well, I'm going to kill you before you kill me. And it can be a useful tool. And it's useful now because my brother's first reaction isn't that. You know, my brother, my tough guy brother said to me one day, you know, I try not to yell at people too much anymore because when I look at it, it doesn't really fucking help. It doesn't get you anywhere. And I was like, who the fuck are you? Like, what? How do you? But he has that insight, you know, and yeah, it's a weird story, but it popped into my head as you were talking, guys. Is that I had a buddy who auditioned for a Broadway play, and for the lead in a Tennessee Williams play in Streetcar Named Desire. And when he walked in, the director clearly, and he's pretty well known, but the director clearly was just like not him, and was kind of, from all accounts, from what I heard, like really an asshole to him. And he had rehearsed, and he'd gotten off book. He knew this role, and there were two gigantic scenes. And the guy was like, we don't need to see the second scene. And he had flown to New York to go to this audition. And he got so upset that he was like, you're going to hear the second fucking scene. And he kicked a chair, and the chair, it flew over their heads. And when I heard the story, and it didn't hit them, like it went over their head, right? And when I heard the story, my first thought was, good for you. Good for you for standing up for yourself. And what he said to me was, I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed that I let my anger get the best of me. He was like, you never would have done that. And I thought, no, I never would have done that. I just would have cowered and been small. And that was probably the beginnings of me recognizing that there's a space in the middle of those two, of kicking the chair and hiding. There's this space of just being able to simply say, I prepared this second scene, and it would mean a tremendous amount to me just to be able to live it out. So I'm going to do that in front of you guys. You don't have to cast me, but I'm going to do that. And which is, I think, what he wished he had done. And my version was so the other side. And to know that there's like a middle, and also to know that any one of those experiences, as long as you don't hurt someone else physically, is okay, because you're kind of just doing the best you can in what can be really, really difficult settings, and whether it's acting or whatever your profession is, or your relationships, you know, like these things are hard. And like we learn in school how to do geometry, but we don't learn our taxes, and we don't like learn conflict resolution, like things that we actually could use, you know, when it comes down to living a life. So, we're all just blind little babies trying to crawl our way off the blanket or something. I don't know where I'm going with this metaphor. So let's move on.
Well, and also, we're all doing the best we can with the tools that we have. I mean, if that guy would have known better at that time, I'm sure he would have done it differently. Like when he came to you and said, "Hey, you wouldn't have done that." But then for you to express that, yeah, but I would have cowered because, and it's all about trying to again be the best version of ourselves, and we do make mistakes, but when we do make those mistakes, not to allow them to cripple us. I was talking to a woman this morning who it was her first time at leading this big meeting, and she's never done it before. And I went up to her, I put my hand on her shoulder, and I said, "You got this. You got this." And she says, "Yeah, but I feel like I'm going to make a mistake." And I said, "Yeah, as long as it doesn't cripple you, you're good." And she laughed, and and then she hugged me and said, "Thank you so much for your support." Just knowing that it's okay to be in the moment, make mistakes, and it's not going, because again, I think a lot of what you have shared is a lot of the ramifications of your past and the way you were raised and the way you were treated as a kid. So of course you're going to react that way because we don't know what we don't know, and you didn't know any better. But through your process and through the process of trying to be as authentic as you possibly can and being the best version of you can, you've done the work on yourself. And I think that is so important for everyone to hear, our audience, whatever you're doing to try to be the best version of you, you're doing the right job. You're on the right track. If we tend to go into our rabbit hole and, or pull the sheet over our head and be like, I'm not even going to deal with this. That's not going to,
or you punch someone,
or you punch,
or
because then you have that feeling,
I've done the
right?
fight. I've done the fight back. I've done that.
But see, here's an interesting thing too. I'll keep the focus on myself, but knowing you, if you were to do that and punch somebody, you'd be the first guy to go reach for his hand and say, "Dude, I'm so sorry, I just knocked you out. Let me help you up." Like, because I would feel horrible too. Even though you just shit talked me and you deserved the fresh one, but now I feel bad that you made me do this to you.
There's the shame spiral that happens. I mean, like, it's true. And look, there are circumstances where things are justified and they just are. But like, I've never been in a fist fight where after the adrenaline has gone down, where my experience wasn't anything other than like shame and sadness and almost depression, where I want to shut down because I feel so horrible that's what took over. It's such an interesting thing when I look back at how I was told I was supposed to respond to things in that way, and how that's never given me, it's never paid off with like utter joy. I've never walked around being like, and then I kicked this guy's ass and I threw this other guy over a fence and I blah 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 blah. I've never felt like, look how great I am. It's always been like, oh my God, what happened? Like, how did that happen?
No, nobody really, I've been fighting for a long time, and that's different when you get in a cage or a ring or whatever, because there's a mutual respect and blah, 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 and there are rules and regulations, but in the street, nobody wins in a fight. Nobody really wins in a fight. You may think you won and you kicked my ass, but all you've proven is that you're still a bully. And here's the other thing that goes along with that. And I'm sure you can relate to this, being successful in your life at this moment in your life. You don't want to get in a confrontation where, God forbid, you hit somebody and then all of a sudden they sue you. At this stage of the game, we as adults, first you need to harness your anger, and then you need to really take a look at, what do I have to lose here? And at our stage of our lives, you don't want to lose anything. You don't want to go backward. So how can I defuse this situation without, like you said, looking like a pussy, but but also taking care of yourself, because again, at this stage of the game, there are no winners in fights, and you got to just do the best you can to
for sure
be a good person, right?
Yeah.
So we know how your brother gets out of fights. How do you get out of fight? Or when was the last time you even got into a close one, and how'd you get out of it? And we'll end on that. That'll just be, since we'll just bring it around to this.
It's been a long time since I've gotten into a physical altercation, for sure. I mean, look, I live in LA, right? So driving feels like a fight on a daily basis. and I really used to be the guy who like could lean out of a window and be like, listen, you motherfucker, like, someone, like the thing that would always make me the craziest is when someone would like cut me off aggressively, and I would hit my horn for safety, and then they'd flip me off. They don't give me my bad hand. They're like, no, fuck you. And I'm like, but you did the egregious thing. And then all the injustice that my entire life I faced comes out like, all right, now I've chased cars down. I've pulled up in front of them. I mean, I've done the whole thing. I now there's sort of a two-step process that either one or both can come up. The first one is, I don't know what that person's going through. I don't know where it is that they feel like they have to get, why they're in such a rush, but I definitely know they probably had very little to no peace of mind in the moment. So if I can just take a half step back and go, maybe they need to be there faster than I do, I can breathe. The second one is a bit of consequence. If I get out of this car and I light you up and I get sued, it's not like I can look at a judge and say, well, he cut me off and then gave me the finger, so I beat him. That the judge is going to go, yeah, he deserved that. Don't worry about it. And then on the flip side, I don't know who's going to get out of that car. I don't know, and I don't know how they're going to get out of that car. I don't know if they're way more fighter than I am. I don't know if they've got a weapon. And do I really want my last thought to be, if I just didn't tell that guy to go fuck himself, I wouldn't be getting shot right now, or whatever, is just enough to give me pause. I'll tell you this funny story here, because this is about my dad, and it's one of my favorite stories of my dad, because my dad was a real tough dude. But he told me a story about, he was driving on the Grand Central Parkway in New York City on his way to the Triborough Bridge to go to Manhattan, where he had a little store in Spanish Harlem. And he's like, and my dad talks like this. He is like, got a funny accent. And he's like, so I'm driving and this guy cuts me, right? So I get pissed off and I cut him. And then he cuts me and I cut, and we're cutting and we're cutting and we're cutting. And we get to the toll booth and we stop because we're in the line. This is obviously pre-easy pay, the line to pay. And I get out of the car and he gets out of the car. And he keeps getting out of the car, and he keeps getting out of the car. And my father looks at this giant human, and he gets out of the car, and he immediately goes, I just wanted to say I'm so sorry for cutting you off, and offers his hand to shake. And the guy goes, and he just takes my dad's hand and then climbs back into his car in his giant body. And I was like, one thing I told me is that my dad's got a real strong survival instinct. And as tough as he thought he was, there's always someone else that's tougher. You know what I mean? There's always a Mike Tyson that gets out of a car. There's always a Roy Jones Jr. who's ready to go like, all right, buddy, there's always my brother, my brother, I'd see my brother and I'd be like, well, fuck you. And then he'd get out and be like, oh, I've made a huge mistake today. So and then I guess the third one really is, I know the flip side of the fight. Like, I know that emotionally, I am going to feel so horrible. And that in the end, if I'm really honest about who I am as a person, I want people to feel good. I like people. I really do. I like to hug them. I like to smile at them. I like to learn about them. So there's no world, where some silly little experience like that is going to be worth the emotional toll on the back end of getting into that fight. So for me, that's enough because I can't remember the last one. I really can't. And prior to walking into Al-Anon rooms, I could have been like, oh, last Tuesday, blah, 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 blah. The week before that, these three guys caught them to me and my brother and realized I made a very big mistake. And, like, I had all those tales. And because I was desperate to prove to you that I was a man, that I was strong, I told those stories like bravado. But internally, I felt terrible about them. So now I'm a little more honest with myself, I think.
What I've learned from the same exact experience that you're talking about as far as driving is that, this took me a long time to learn too, because I was like you, or how dare you cut me off and then give me the finger? Like, you don't even. But what I realized, and this is a tool that I use now to protect myself and to calm myself down, is that guy who just cut me off, I could have been anyone. He's not cutting me off. I could have been Tom, Dick, Susan, Harry, doesn't even matter. That's just who he is, and he's in a rush, and for whatever reason, that's just what he does. So then I had to take a deep breath, and I had to say to myself, okay, how am I going to react? Because everything in life I've found for myself is, how do I react to this? Am I willing to take the bait? Am I going to get myself all upset or get myself all worked up where I want to choke this motherfucker out? No, I need to step back and say, wait a minute. Do I want to allow this person to destroy my serenity? Or am I going to stay in my lane? I like to stay in my own lane. I'm going to keep my blinders on, and I'm just going to calm down and take care of myself. And you know what? I tend to now leave 10, 15 minutes earlier than I need to for an appointment. So I'm not racing around. And then if somebody cuts me off, I'm not pissed off. It's like, I don't have anything to do today. I have allowed myself so much time to get to this appointment. So go ahead, bro. And again, like you said, who needs to get into confrontations at our age? There's nothing to prove. And at the end of the day, like you said, I don't want to get myself all emotionally involved with someone else or someone else's, business
stuff.
So
yeah, totally.
Right.
That's a great note to end on.
Absolutely.
And if you're younger, you have the future of not really caring too much about people and not wanting to hurt them to look forward to.
Take our experience, strength, and hope, and don't get into confrontations, especially on the street.
Also,
exactly.
I've noticed as I got older, I don't care as much what people think. So if somebody and stuff like that, and I'll be like, all right, that's on you. I'm fine with myself. See ya. Bye. Yeah, you obviously are having a bad day.
Yeah, smile and wave like your dad did. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for cutting you off. I love that story.
Yeah.
I love that too. He's like, I have one last thing on that. One time I pissed a guy off. He looked at me and I blew him a kiss.
Yeah.
And his face changed completely. He went like this. He was like, he was so angry, and he saw me blow the kiss, and he looked at me like this, and then his face just beamed into a smile. And I went, oh.
Well, again, that's how.
She just deflated my balloon. I had a balloon. I was going to pop in her face, and then she deflated it. Now I have to go.
That's right. So for us and for our audience, whenever you get into something, think to yourself, how can I diffuse this? How can I come at this with love instead of coming at this with anger or all the built up anger and trauma and programming that I have from the past and think I need to prove myself here because you're doing me wrong? No one is doing us wrong. No one is coming out of their car, out of their house, looking to get, after me today. So I think it is a personal thing. That being said, bro, I love you. You are one of the best men I've ever met. You're authentic. And I appreciate you as a friend and how you take care of yourself, because it means a lot, I think, it means a lot to me, but it also means a lot to the world and our audience to know that there are men out there that are really actually working on themselves to be the best version of themselves they can and not come forward with this bravado.
There's a lot of men out there doing that today.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful age for that. There's a lot of people, and you're a great example of it, as are you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you, guys. I'm honored by it and honored to sit with you guys very much so.
Awesome.
It was an honor to have you and spend this time. Thank you for sharing.
I'm really proud of you, bro.
Stories. Yeah.
Really proud of you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah. It's a good thing you're doing here.
Thanks. You too.
Right.
All right, brother. Take care. What the what?